Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us. Greenlight Ventures presentation and brought to you by NoFilter.net and Bet Online as well. We'll tell you about their fantastic services. But in a million years, I never thought I would see this day where we would be talking about a bonehead blunder. This goes beyond Chris Webber. This goes beyond something that you would expect from maybe a Mike Budenholzer or a Doc Rivers. I never thought I would see the day where we were talking about a serious blunder by Erik Spoelstra, head coach of the Miami Heat, costing the team a game as they fall to 5-7, and costing a lot of bettors a chance to cash their ticket if they were laying 1 point with the Miami Heat and or betting the game on the money line. They're in against the Detroit Pistons. I don't know if this was one of those phenomenal NBA in-season cup games. I don't think it was, because we all know the significance of that. And I do believe it's only a matter of time before some coach like Popovich refuses. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. I guess it would have been established already, but just refuses to play in the NBA in-season tournament. Says, you know what? Fuck you, Adam Silver. We're not playing. Fine us whatever you want. $20 million. We don't care. We don't want any part of this bogus presentation that you have, where we may end up playing an extra regular season game for what? So we can say, well, we won the in-season tournament. What did that do for the Lakers last year? Nothing. They got run out of the building by the Denver Nuggets in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. It wasn't even a contest. So that is not a great distinction. And yet, I don't think this game counted as one of the cup games. Detroit playing a little better basketball this year. They're not a total disaster like they were last season. But nonetheless, they had a losing record going into this game. They were 4-7. And they take on the Miami Heat. The game ends up in overtime. Tyler Hero's having a night of nights. If you had Tyler Hero in any kind of prop bet, you cashed them all if you went over. Had 40 points in the game, hit 10 three-pointers. Holy Rex Chapman, what are we talking about here? That hasn't happened in Heat history. 10 three-pointers in the ballgame. And Miami is in a position, they take the lead with 1.8 seconds to go in overtime. Now leading by 2 points. 1.8 seconds to go. Detroit gets a timeout. They inbound the basketball, throw an alley-oop, tie up the ball game. And what happens? Erik Spoelstra calls a timeout. How many coaches do they have? They have so many coaches on these NBA staffs. I mean, even Vince Lombardi didn't have this many assistant coaches when he was running the Green Bay Packer organization. Like one guy on the sidelines. Hey, coach, you want to run the ball or you want to pass? Now they have a dozen coaches sitting on the bench, another dozen coaches sitting behind the bench. They have guys in the rafters that are designated as coaches. They have guys outside buying a rapist from that street vendor who's selling those shish kebabs and the Fanta orange soda. They're assistant coaches. They all have input, and yet nobody was aware to tell Erik Spoelstra and or he himself that they didn't have any timeouts left. So they put Malik Beasley on the line to shoot 2 technical free throws. He makes them both. Detroit wins the game by 2, and I don't know that you'll ever see something as ugly like that happen again with Erik Spoelstra at the helm. Very, very rare that this guy would make a mental error. If you were betting the game and you got crushed on that, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, and you can make a comeback tonight. And they're your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen and bet on it at the same time. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment props as well, head to Bet Online today to get in all the action that you can possibly endure in America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. Now, our game, as we try to bury your bookie, always starts on a Wednesday with this man who's about to join us here on the show. And there is a ton of action on the board in the NBA. We have a full slate of NFL games coming up again this week. And of course, college football is very much in the mix. College basketball is going, and there's nobody that's hitting any better than our good friend from Seattle, Washington, the heavyweight handicapping champion of the world. Troy West joins us here on the show. Troy, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Gosh, you talk about the NBA, and I don't think this will uphold, but who would ever thought that, you got the 76ers at 2-8, you got the Bucks at 3-8, you got the Heat at 4-6. I mean, it's unfortunate that Adam Silver put together these playing, playoff games because now 10 teams make it. But I'll tell you, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, are the Sixers, the Bucks, the Heat, a lot of people thought those were probably three of the top six in the East, and now all of a sudden they're at the bottom of the barrel. So it's it's been a weird start to this NBA season without a doubt. Even the Knicks not playing well, the Pacers not playing well. It's been a weird start.
The I mean, the Bucks are doomed. Doc Rivers, as a coach, has ruined more teams than Mike Tannenbaum did as a general manager, and he was a guy that easily could have gotten a sponsorship from a funeral home because he was just burying franchises. He did it with the Jets, he did it with the Dolphins. But as soon as you hire Doc Rivers, don't you need to put like
Yes.
it's because it doesn't seem like he has it, and now the talk is that they're going to deal either Antetokounmpo, possibly, or maybe even Damian Lillard. And of course, we're very much interested in that here in South Florida because the Heat are always the team that seems to covet the
Yep.
services of one of these guys. And it does appear that the way they're configured, they desperately need something other than a disconnected Jimmy Butler and maybe even an aging and fading Jimmy Butler if they're going to put themselves in the championship mix. They look to be destined to be in that play-in. You know what? I've changed my mind on that. I had a little bit of an epiphany on this, Troy West. And you would think me, being a 73-year-old fart from Brooklyn, would be old school all the way. And at first, I was appalled. I hated the bastardizing of the playoff system when they started adding in all kinds of teams. We already had it back in the day when there were only 16 teams in the NBA and the NHL, and half of them made the postseason. So it didn't seem like the regular season had that much value. But they have put a little emphasis on the regular season now. It carries its weight towards the final week of the season for a lot of teams and a lot of fans since they've expanded the format. I was opposed to the idea of adding more wildcard teams in baseball. I think that worked out pretty well, although you had some questions about the format, the 2 out of 3, and then all 3 games being in the higher seeds
Yeah.
home park, which kind of eliminates a lot of the local fans from having interest in that opening series. And then your Baltimore Orioles got eliminated in the opening series. So
You know,
that made it even more painful. But they were in there with a fair shot, or so it seemed. And it put more emphasis on winning your division, on playing out every game in the regular season. So from that standpoint, I thought it was good. I don't really mind it so much in the NBA because when you got to the last couple of weeks of the regular season, if you were in that spot where you were the ninth or tenth position, or maybe battling, to be in the eighth spot, those games became kind of hard to watch and more and more meaningless. And for the better, that they were tougher to handicap because you didn't know who was actually going to be playing. So I don't mind it so much, but nonetheless, that was if that cost the Heat a playoff spot. I mean, when would you figure Erik Spoelstra? He's got 100 assistant coaches.
yeah.
He's got Pat Riley probably in his ear in some kind of an earpiece going, you don't have any more timeouts, Erik. So I don't know if you were involved in that game on the West Coast. It was probably
Thankfully,
a little
no.
easier to
I
catch.
was paying attention. I was paying attention, but yeah, what a debacle. Like you said, I just can't figure it out. I think a lot of those NBA assistants are all puppets. I mean, you really just kind of see them sitting there with their hands underneath their legs and just kind of watching from afar. So I don't put too much value in how much impact they have during the game. But what a debacle yesterday, without a doubt.
Somebody's got to be able to tell this guy you don't have any more timeouts. I mean, isn't that the first thing that these guys address when they do have a timeout? It's like, okay, here's the situation, guys. Whatever you do, don't call timeout. They're telling the players that. All goes back to the infamous Chris Webber incident. But if a player calls a timeout mistakenly, not having any left, all right, he's in the heat of competition and he's just thinking instinctively. But it's kind of inexcusable for a coach to put a guy on the line with no time left in overtime. And if you were a better and you were back in the heat and laying to 1 point, I mean, you have to hide the sharp objects. I mean, you're in a position there where you're thinking, I got to slash my wrist. All right, a good week last week. You're on a trend here with the Eagles. That was a good pick, and they easily covered the spread after they buried us the week before when they were up 22-0 and then failed to cover against Jacksonville. Cal, you have gauged this. Cal, is the coach calling you and giving you inside information? I mean, how are you? You were on the Cal team whether they win or whether they lose. You've been able to pick them every week on the right side of things, and you hit with that.
By the
And
way, Defo,
yeah,
did you see the end of that Cal game? That not a lot of people were watching that. It was over so late, but that was one of the greatest spread finishes in the history of sports.
yeah.
Cal was up by 3 with about a minute 30 to go in the game, and they had the ball on the 30 on the Wake Forest 30-yard line, and Wake Forest I think had 2 timeouts left, and the quarterback busts it going in for a touchdown. He does the old fashioned slide at the 10-yard line instead of going in for the touchdown, put him up by 10. So then you're all of a sudden going, holy crap, you're going to grab your bottle of whiskey and you feel like you lost. Well, they decided to run a couple more plays just because Wake Forest couldn't take it all the way down to zero, and the guy bust one for a touchdown. So it was quite the
Miraculous.
finish. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun on that one.
Yeah, I was sweating that Pittsburgh game, Pittsburgh and the Commanders,
Oh yeah,
where
oh yeah,
Pittsburgh was getting 2.5. A couple of our guys were on that Pittsburgh game
yep,
last
yep.
week here on Bury Your Bookie, and they look like they're going in for what's going to give them the go-ahead score. This was somewhere about midway, well, maybe 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And the guy fumbles at the one after they don't blow the whistle for a half an hour while they're pushing him back. He goes from his goal line all the way to the other goal line, no whistle. They finally wrestle the ball away from him, and the Commanders take over. They can't put the game away. They couldn't run enough time off the clock. Pittsburgh gets the ball again, and Mike Williams, a jet castoff of all things, catches this looper. I thought they were going to invoke the infield fly rule in that pass from Russell Wilson. It was so high in the air, and makes the catch behind the secondary, goes in for the score, and they manage to hold on. And even still, you think you've got it. You're up 28-27. And still, you have Washington coming back and looking like they're going to threaten to put the game away. Every one of these games, literally, just give me a blindfold and the last drag on a cigarette. Almost every one of these games in the NFL is like facing a firing squad. Imagine, too,
Yep.
if you had the Broncos on the money line.
Oh,
And
unbelievable,
you're thinking a guy, I
unbelievable.
mean, routine, go out there, kick a 35-yard field goal, going to
Yep,
win the game. They were getting 8.5 points or 9 in that game, so the money
yep,
line had to be significant. And you're all excited and leaping off the chair there, ready to cash. And then next thing you know, blocked. You're like, what?
yep,
Blocked? Who
yep.
the fuck blocks a 35-yard field goal? It never happens.
Never,
They make
never.
98% of them.
I know.
I think I heard a stat yesterday. I was listening to a broadcast, and a guy said he looked it up. 35-yard field goal attempts, 5 out of the last 2,000 or something have been blocked. I mean, it's some ridiculous number. So it happened to the people. You had to have some balls to have the Broncos on the money line in that spot anyway against the Chiefs, but nonetheless, you got burnt. And the Chiefs continue to be the luckiest team
They
on the
do.
face of the earth. I mean,
Unbelievable.
it's like Lou Gehrig is on this team. It's amazing. All right. So last week was good. 2-1. Troy West. And I don't know what direction you're going to go in this week because there's so many things on the plate here. I know you guys and your group you do a lot of handicapping on college basketball, all kinds of stuff. There's MMA going on at Madison Square Garden. So what are we looking at, Troy West? What do we have for the people that will help them bury their bookie this week?
Yeah, I love three games. I'm going to give you all three. They're all going to be college football. We're actually going to take you guys to Friday night. So you're cashing tickets even before Saturday. I don't want to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to buy a point here because it makes sense. I'm going to buy a point. San Jose State is plus 13 and a half at home. I want to get this thing to 14 and a half. San Jose State, a 14 and a half point underdog at home against Boise State. The San Jose State team is not a bad football team. They've got some offensive firepower. They can play a little bit of defense. Defensively, they're not great, but they can play a little bit of defense. Boise State has not been challenged all year long. I know they've got the run attack with Gentry. I think San Jose State keeps this game close. In a situation where you get 13 and a half, it makes a lot of sense to get it to 14 and a half. Give me San Jose State plus the points on Friday night. I think they keep this game close. I think Boise State ultimately prevails 34-27, but I'll take San Jose State plus the points.
All right, taking the points and buying a point there. About what would that cost you to buy that point, Troy?
Sometimes that gets you up to, it depends on your book. And I think that's why book shopping is so important. But, sometimes it will only get you up to minus 120. Sometimes you got to get up to about minus 130 for that. But it makes a lot of sense when you're at 3.5 down to 2.5 or 2.5 up to 3.5. You know how it is. It can
Yeah.
make a big difference. So in those numbers, it makes sense.
Well, that half a point, the hook is like the sword of Damocles for a lot of people. So
It is.
if you can get out of and have a situation where you're getting more than 2 touchdowns, that gives you a lot of breathing room that you otherwise wouldn't have. So San Jose State plus 14.5. You're going to lay probably 120 to win 100 on this one. Although I would imagine your wager will be more substantial,
Yeah, I
having
hope
seen
so.
some of your tickets and they're going against Boise State. That's where we start with Troy West of Troy wins. Where are we going next?
Yeah, we're keeping it Friday night. Arizona -1 at home against Houston. Arizona, they've been probably the biggest disappointment this year. Returned a lot of guys, a lot of firepower on offense. They've been, like I said, a huge disappointment. Arizona is 3-6. They're going up against Houston, who is 4-5. I like Arizona. They're still tough to beat at home. Brent Brennan's a good coach. He'll have those guys ready to go. Noah Fafita has not had a good year, but he's looking forward to playing a bad defense with Houston. Give me Arizona -1 to take care of Houston.
All right, so we have Arizona -1, San Jose State. You're buying that, or San Jose, yeah, buying that up to 14 and a hook. And you have one more in the trio of college football games you're giving us this week.
Yes, sir. Another Friday night game. And by the way, Boise State is not Friday night. That is a Saturday night game. So I apologize on that. Arizona's Friday night. And then I'm giving you another Friday night game. Give me Washington -3 at home against UCLA. This is a big game for Washington. Washington needs this game to become bowl eligible. If they do not get this game, they likely will not make a bowl game because their final game is at Oregon. This should be a sold out crowd Friday night. They've got new uniforms for this one. Everybody's rallying together. They want the Huskies to make a bowl game. They're at home against UCLA. They just got manslaughtered last week by Penn State. They're going to be hungry. Give me Washington -3. That is a Friday night game on Fox. So
All right.
looking forward to that. Those are my three: San Jose State plus the points, Arizona -1, and Washington -3.
All right, a three-bagger here of college football games for Troy West. Did you take a look at any of the national championship implications as they were posting potential brackets as they stand right now for the college football playoffs? So are you seeing anything there? Because it doesn't seem like there's a definitive surefire champion. Georgia may be out of the playoffs altogether after this loss to Ole Miss. I don't know where that puts Ole Miss in your opinion, and yet you still have the heavyweights there: Oregon, Texas, romping in their game over the Florida Gators. What are you seeing? Look into your crystal ball there for the national championship, and what are you seeing? Do you have anything there that you're excited about?
Well, my pick at the start of the year was Ohio State, and they're still looking like, you put Ohio State on a neutral field against Oregon, who was their one loss. I think they probably beat Oregon. Looking at it's tough. I mean, I like what they did. I love what they did, and it makes sense. But on the flip side, you take a team like Boise State, really has no business if they end up making the playoff. You take a team like, I hate to say it, Indiana. Indiana's earned it, yes, but gosh, they haven't played anybody. Can you imagine if Indiana was playing that SEC schedule? That one's painful to look at. BYU, that's another team. Are they really going to potentially get into the playoff? I mean, talk about luckiest teams. That might be the luckiest team of all time. And that's an interesting line this week. BYU, who is 9-0, is -3 at home against the 3-6 Kansas team.
Wow.
What does that tell you? That's a that's an interesting line. We've had that one circled. So um,
Yeah, I mean, we were spitting up pea soup like Linda Blair in The Exorcist with the BYU game. We had a couple of guys on that last week also from Bury Your Bookie, and they were laying 4.5. They ended up winning the game outright, but they did everything in their power to blow that game and cancel out the winning wagers that people were counting on
yep,
that were back in BYU, thinking that they actually were better than they appeared to be. Of course, well, we got stuffed with Miami. Georgia Tech on the money line would have taken some guts.
yep.
But at 11.5 points, there were many people that were riding the wave. And we've talked about it on the show before, the Cristobal factor. I believe Mario, never mind Erik Spoelstra, not
Yeah.
having a timeout and calling one and giving a game away outright. They're putting a guy on a free throw line to win a ball game with no time left. Cristobal, I believe, is worth 7 points. Home field might be worth 3 points in a lot of handicappers' equations. Mario Cristobal is worth 7 points to the other team. But I still didn't think that wasn't enough for them to lose to Georgia Tech outright. And that buried a lot of people and also changed the opinion. There was another 9-0 team that, as you said, how many times have we been hearing this in college football this year? Yeah, well, they're undefeated, but they haven't played anybody. It seems like that's applicable to almost every team. We've discussed that on the show during the course of the season. You did have Georgia and Alabama and I guess what LSU playing each other, but other than that, I mean, when you look at the top contenders, very few of them have been challenged this year.
Yeah, it's been a weird year with the way the schedulings came up, especially with the Big Ten. The Big Ten's really not the conference it used to be. I mean, yes, you've got Ohio State, Oregon's been outstanding, but Michigan's not that great this year. Penn State's, on the fence, but you just don't have those. Wisconsin's down this year, Northwestern, Rutgers, Iowa. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it's like you get so many free. I don't want to call them free wins, but you really get some freebies in the Big Ten. Where the SEC. you've got the Texas, you've got got Oklahoma, you've got Georgia, Alabama. I mean, Vanderbilt's sneaky good this year. Auburn's not bad. It's just a deeper conference. So those guys are at a huge disadvantage to make the playoff when it comes all said and done.
Do you think it's possible, switching gears here to the Heisman race, will Travis Hunter actually be accorded the Heisman Trophy, which would be well deserved, no doubt about it? Colorado also has now entered the mix and possibly in contention to be a conference champion, which most people thought that Deion Sanders was going to be exposed as a massive fraud and that this whole thing was going to fall apart at the seams. It's been just the opposite. Colorado surprised a lot of people this year with their play. Will they give it to somebody that isn't a quarterback, Troy West? We've seen it in the past, but it's almost by default. This guy playing every snap and playing at the top level, both offensively and defensively, for a team that's getting surprising results beyond their expectations. Do you think they'll actually give him the Heisman? Because he's now the favorite at plus 120.
Gosh, from a stat standpoint, probably not right. But like you said, what he's doing for that team and that team potentially making the playoff, I think that would give him, if they don't lose another game, I think he's probably a slam dunk to win it. You just can't really consider Gentry to me. I mean, they've just played a cupcake schedule all year long. I think they played one top 25 team all year. Um, Dylan Gabriel's right there. What he's doing at Oregon's been fantastic. Hasn't necessarily put up all the stats, but just the way he's distributed the ball around and what they've done has been incredible. Cam Ward, that loss obviously hurt him quite a bit. I think he needs to run the table to be in consideration. So I think you probably give it to Travis Hunter, like you said, especially if they win their next three games, which they will be favored in all three. It will be interesting to see if they make the playoff, and I think at that point he's definitely a slam dunk to win it.
All right, want to get a little spectrum going here on the NFL where we're at right now. The Chiefs still undefeated, but it seems like every week they're going to lose a game. You have the Detroit Lions looking really good. They were able to overcome 5 picks by Jared Goff and still pull this game out of their ass. Literally, you talk about one that looked like it was a certain loss, and they come back and win that ball game. What's your thought about the Super Bowl chase in the National Football League? Are we looking at the usual suspects that we just mentioned, or and the Ravens, of course, are in there for our friend Dylan Rossi, who's got a $500,000 riding on them winning the Super Bowl on a $50 5-way parlay ticket, which is pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. But what do you think, Troy? I mean, have you formulated an opinion as to who you would back right now to be the Super Bowl champion?
I think this year more than any other year, it's about as wide open as it gets. I mean, it really is. And you look at the AFC. Obviously, Buffalo's probably the cream of the crop right now. Baltimore right there. Pittsburgh looks good. Are they really Super Bowl contenders? Gosh, I don't know. The Houston Texans to me still a good football team. They're still getting healthy. They're not healthy right now. Then the Chiefs. I mean, I don't want to call the Chiefs frauds. They're 9-0. I was the first to say at the beginning of the year, I thought they would take a step back. But yeah, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, they legitimately have had 4 games on the schedule that they could have lost. They could have lost that Falcons game. We know the Ravens game the first of the year. They should have lost that Bengals game. And then they really should have lost this week. I just don't believe in the Chiefs. The NFC, I do think it's more of a 2 to 3 team race in the NFC. It'll be interesting to see if the 49ers can get back into the conversation. But right now, it looks like to me it's between the Eagles and the Lions. But then again, the Lions, I mean, they came down to earth. They were down 23-7 at halftime. Jared Goff looked like the rookie, Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So they've got holes as well. Every team right now has some holes. This isn't the years past where it was going to be a clear path for the Niners and a clear path for the Chiefs. A lot of teams have holes right now.
I just want to see the pregame episode where Dan Campbell actually eats like a live wild boar to motivate his team to come
Yeah.
out there. But yeah, Lions certainly playing on a little bit of serendipity last week and been playing very well overall. So sort of wide open. Do you have a lean? Will the champion come from the NFC or the AFC, or is it too soon to tell?
If I really had to bet it, I would probably go right now with the Baltimore Ravens. But again, I didn't realize this stat until just recently. The Baltimore Ravens have the worst pass defense in the NFL. That's hard to believe. Sitting at 7-3, they've got a great offense. Defensive front's pretty solid, but when I heard that stat, I didn't realize it was that bad. That's tough to win a Super Bowl when you don't have a defensive secondary. And they didn't do much at the trade deadline either. So, But if I did add the bet, I do like the Ravens. The Deontay Johnson hasn't really shown up for them at all. It'll be interesting to see if he can make any sort of an impact. But I do like the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's playing at an all-time high level.
Well, we also know this about Lamar Jackson, that unfortunately, when he's gotten to the postseason, he has not been able
Mhm.
to maintain that incredible level of play that he exhibits many times during the regular season. And
Correct.
that's another one of those things. Like Aaron Judge, he's going to have to get another chance if he can get that onus and that so-called monkey off of his back. All right, I know you do this. One last thing, Troy West, and it's a pleasure having you on every Wednesday. You've been winning for us all season long and doing a great job. But I know you get involved in MMA, which a lot of people love to bet. I
Yes.
have not. I mean, being a boxing guy, I never really fully embraced mixed martial arts. I watch it, I understand it, but I haven't got to the point where I actually feel comfortable betting on it. I do know, and I've had some interviews in the past, probably the distant past, with John Bones Jones. Didn't he retire like 30 years ago, this guy? I mean, he's minus 700 in the main event at Madison Square Garden in New York. And you have to lay 700 to win 100 on this guy. I mean, is that worth? Obviously, I stay out of those kind of props. If I was going to bet the fight, I'd probably bet the underdog almost every time on those occasions. So, is that a waste of time to even consider? And wasn't John Bones Jones? He retired. Was he in jail or something? He had all kinds of jackpots going, and here he is in the main event, headlining another another Dana White card.
Yeah, the guy loves the powder. That's been one thing that's kept him out of the ring. He can't stay away from that. So we'll see if he even makes it to Saturday. I don't have this fight handicapped. I have listened to a lot of the experts that do say that his opponent Stipe can win this fight. So if you were to bet it, I think, like you said, you go with the underdog and hope and pray. John Jones, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, so hard to go against him. He's minus 700 for a reason. But I have heard from the experts that this is a fight that he could potentially lose. So it'll be interesting. 27-1 against 20-4. This is arguably the greatest UFC card that they've ever put together. So
Is
really
that right?
looking forward
Wow.
to it. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
very nice. All right, and you'll be betting the undercard, no doubt, and making
Yes.
recommendations there. Do you have anything that stands out? Any pick that stands out on the card, or have you looked into it yet?
Michael Chandler, he hasn't fought in quite some time. He's a pretty hefty underdog, plus 215 going up against Charles Oliveira. Michael Chandler, this is the guy that has been training to fight Conor McGregor, and McGregor keeps backing out, and then had the injury. I like Michael Chandler to possibly sneak in there as a plus 215 dog and take care of Charles Oliveira.
All right, getting a little taste on that. You're getting a nice
Yeah.
price as opposed to laying out 700 to win 100. I would never be in favor of making that move. All
No.
right, very good. Troy West, where can people get all of your picks and selections? You have so many great programs for people out there. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get this insight, and it definitely helps in a lot of different situations. And you've been winning all year, so that's another big plus. So, how can people reach you?
Yeah, thank you. Get to the Instagram. It's Troy West. All sorts of giveaways, free picks. We love taking care of our companies. Come take a look. It's troywins.com. We've got a great community. Come take a look. 7 days, $7. That's all plays, VIP. There's no upsells, no gimmicks. It's 7 days for $7. Again, the Instagram is It's Troy West, and the website is troywins.com.
Anything on the Tyson Jake Paul fight? Would
I'm
it be
pulling
better to
so
bet that it doesn't happen on Friday night? I mean, that
Yeah,
for
I'm
some reason they back out.
pulling so hard for Tyson. I was trying to double check those odds. Those things get to be so funky. I'm surprised they even let you bet them.
Yeah,
But I do pull for Mike Tyson hard in this one.
it's like betting on celebrity boxing when that was popular there, and you'd
Yes,
see like, yeah, I got
exactly.
200 on Screech. And you're thinking, what the fuck? How sick of a degenerate are you?
Uh,
All right, Troy, always a
Agreed.
pleasure. You made our Wednesday great, as always. The selection, San Jose State, plus 14 and a hook. You're paying a little price for the extra point. Arizona -1, Washington -3. That's from Troy West. Troy wins. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for getting up with us out there
You
on the
bet.
extreme West Coast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Defo. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Troy.